And we're live. Hello, everyone. Should we record this? Put it on a podcast? Maybe people listen to it?
I think so. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, should we do the intro? We'll do the intro. Welcome back to Feed the Good Wolf podcast. We are live on YouTube. We go live every Tuesday, 10 Eastern. Try to anyways, unless one of us gets sick or no one wants to get on. But here we are. Another special edition of our podcast we're recording. As always, this is the podcast that's trying to get you fitter, faster, stronger. I'm Todd Wise. And we got Heather Chapa,
What's
Tyler.
up?
Oh, you're going to say hello this time?
Yeah, I was going to say hello. What's up?
Sick. Harley and Noah, all coaches of the pack. We got Marissa not here, but she's on the chat. So if you guys are on YouTube, get in the chat. We have 0 watchers right now, everyone. So exciting.
Sick.
All right, today we're just going to go around. Well, first I want to give a shout out actually to all of the affiliate owners. So people who watch this later on. It was really interesting. I was watching Andrew Hiller last night, and the rest of his episode is not very, it's whatever. Watch it if you're an affiliate owner. But the biggest thing he said, and I post on my Instagram, is that without affiliate owners and or coaches, there is no CrossFit. And I thought about that a lot. Now, it's not like it's profound, and people have said this for a long time, but I do think that affiliate owners inside of a CrossFit gym and CrossFit coaches like Harley working, doing the good work, don't get enough praise. And we don't highlight these people enough in the ecosystem. I think with like the sport of it and people like Tia and Matt, and now Tia does own an affiliate. And I know that they owned an affiliate early on and then they closed it and focused on themselves and everything else. And I know that the community is a big aspect, but you know, someone like Matt has a closed gym. Maybe they'll open it up and run an affiliate or whatever. But someone like Rich has been running an affiliate since the beginning. And because of that, he grows CrossFit within, you know, Cookeville, Tennessee. And we all kind of grow CrossFit everywhere we're at. And it is our responsibility to be the stewards of our area. And it was something that I thought about last night. Like, you know, we have a ton of people training on site now. I went into class, coached 4 and 5 p.m. yesterday. And I was leaving. It was like 61 degrees. Nice. I was walking into Whole Foods. And I was like, man, this is really sick. Like, it would be so cool to like get people to move here the way Train Think Tank or like Invictus does and train on site to be competitive and grow our community even bigger and move into a larger space and give people a place where they can really just grow and flourish. And like, it was cool because our 4 and 5 o'clock class are really diving into the program design. They really enjoy what's going on and they're working towards a larger goal of getting better. So we're leading with the fitness. And they're diving more into, like, we got 6 or 7 people who are going to take the judges course who want to help with quarterfinals. Then we got 18 people so far who qualified for quarterfinals. And there's more people who need to sign up who haven't like signed up on our Google Doc to let us know that they've qualified, even though I talked to them in class. Some people don't even know that they qualified for quarterfinals. And I talked to a bunch of them and ran their percents. I was like, you made it. Like, are you going to do it? It's $50, you know? And then the program design that I write for the gym is all geared towards quarterfinals right now to build them up to having the intensities, the volume, the bottleneck style workouts. You know, I've looked at all the historical age group online qualifiers, all the last chance qualifiers, the semifinals, and then obviously like regionals. And because I've been doing it so long, I have a rich knowledge and history of that. And the programming pushes them forward to this specific goal that's 3 weeks out. And we don't know what we're getting, but we're trying to make do with what we have. And everyone's just really excited to build themselves in that direction. And I think just right now, like if you're a CrossFit affiliate owner or a CrossFit coach, you're doing a really good job pushing everybody's fitness. We need to acknowledge that more. And without our hard work and like focusing these people on quarterfinals and getting them ready and prepared so they have a sense of and true preparedness for it, it builds the sport. It builds the CrossFit ecosystem. It builds our gyms. It builds everyone's fitness. And it creates a lot of buy-in to draw people in to push themselves to become more fit. And like this is where we're going to go with the talk today a little bit about like, you know, why one-on-one coaching or just coaching in general and what is good programming and what is not good programming and why. A little play off of like last week when we talked about Fran and NC Fit. But, you know, it's getting people to look at what they're doing to grow and progress. We're bringing in a new coach as well. And like, her and I talked yesterday, and it was about modifications for class. We don't call it scaling. We call it modifications. That's another thing. I don't scale things up or down. I get the word, but we want people to know that's modifying it to where you're at, knowing that that's just for today and it's a growth process and almost like progression. I'd rather us use the word progression. The only problem is in CrossFit, like level 1, level 2, that word gets used as like a movement progression. Let's say you're deadlifting, you teach them from the floor position first, then you teach them the pull to the knee, then you teach them from all the way up. And then, and some people teach it in reverse. Some people teach it from the top down. Either way, that's their movement progression. I like to talk to people about progression of like, you can't do wall walks. So we modify it to something nearest to the wall walk. So then down the road, 3 months, 6 months, a year, you can do wall walks. And that's a conversation I was having with her. And she's like, that's great. Like I've really, honed in on that. I know that that's what you guys are about. We're trying to build people and not just like give them a pacifier for that day, for that workout. And then, the rest of the training we build helps people build those skills outside of the year. So it is tough because like right now we are working on quarters and gearing people towards those harder workouts, heavier loads, barbells under fatigue, all that stuff. Like even today we had bottleneck of handstand pushups, strict handstand pushups, wall facing handstand pushups with aerobic movement in there, and 4,000 meters of rowing peppered in, broken up, and it just crushed people. Like, and it was good. And that's like what they're going to see. And I told them like, this is the challenge you're going to take on. We're going to get, exposure to this. If you guys can't do these movements, here's some substitutes for those movements, but try to choose the hardest one in a bottleneck style. So like easiest to hardest, and fill those things in. And we go through it all. And like, if you can't do handstand pushups, I had dumbbell push press, seated floor press for the strict handstand pushups, and then wall walk for the wall facing. And then we just went from variations of those things, having kipping handstand pushups, strict, and then wall facing. And the first movement was hand release pushups, actually, even though they may not do those. I just like it. I would have liked a dumbbell bench press, but with a class of like 20 people, you just can't do it. Yeah. But yeah, like it's really cool what we're doing inside of affiliates. And I know Harley's doing it every day and Tyler's doing it, and then Heather's here with me. And I think we just don't give enough shine on all of these affiliate owners, whether they're good, they're bad, you like them, you don't like them. It's like we are changing the world together, and we've brought this higher level of fitness that we know works. It's efficacy, it's potency, and we need to continue to do it. And I would like for us to just talk about good programming today, so then people get a little feel for like what we think, what we believe. Some of the topics we're going to do are like, oops, I got to scroll. We got notes here. Someone talk while I look for the notes. I forgot where they're at.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was telling you yesterday, kind of going back to like the affiliate and just being able to like work on progressing people. Like I was having a conversation yesterday with an athlete who recently came to us about, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. And she was telling me that she like when the last open workout came out and she had to do the chest to bars, and she was upset because she was like, I could do chest to bars, but I never do them at my gym because they're hard or whatever. So she was like, it's just easier for me to do chin over bar. And now I'm kind of kicking myself because I wish that like I was forcing myself or being pushed by a coach to actually do that. And so yesterday we had pull-ups in our workout and had chest to bars. And so the conversation with her was like, I think across the whole workout, they were going to be doing like maybe close to 50 chest to bars or something like that, depending on like what their skill and ability level was. And so I would tell her, I was like, hey, why don't you just do like, because it was like sets of 12,
48 to 60 to be exact for most people.
Yeah. And so, but the sets were like 12. And so I was like, well, do 6 chest to bar and then scale down and do 6 chin over bar. So you're still getting the pulling volume in, but she's still like working towards being able to like do the chest to bar work. And so I think sometimes like as coaches, when we come into class, it's like, okay, well, you can't do 60 chest to bar. So just like, don't do chest to bar, like just do chin over bar or whatever that is. So I think even part of scaling it is getting them to understand, modifying it is getting them
she comes from a different place, people.
Sorry, I'm learning. But it's getting them to understand that like we still want that pulling volume and we still want to give them that, and not necessarily just scaling the reps down for them for like an athlete like that, but like still giving them that exposure to chest bar. And I think that, that same thing with like handstand pushups. It's like, I think yesterday, because we don't do a lot of them, but like now we're starting to like give them more exposure to that. It's like, okay, if they can do handstand pushups, like do as many as they can, and then scaling it down is like something that I like to always just
modifying it.
Modifying it.
Jeez Louise.
Strike two.
Dang it.
Hey, if you
Sorry,
guys are
sorry,
watching
sorry.
live, give me a thumbs up in the
Modifying,
chat. I want to see who's watching live. We got 5
Anyways,
people
okay,
watching.
you get my
Modify.
point. You get my point. But
If you're watching live, thumbs up in the chat. We got 5 people. I want to see who you are. Yeah, modify. All right. So what we're going to talk about is like, how do we organize training? What makes sense? How decisions are made? What is good training in our mind? What is bad training? Why and how do you make the decisions on exercise selection, load, time, etc.? And we're just going to talk about how training matters. And like, I think setting the stage for that about affiliates and CrossFit coaches, that was like the stage setting for good training. Because at the end of the day, when you go into a CrossFit gym or you hire a coach, the first priority should be getting fitter, obviously, like whatever that means to you. Then secondarily, building relationship and rapport with your coach, having trust in them and their knowledge base and everything else, and then growing from there. But like, we really have to get to a space in the fitness space where you are getting people fitter by measure. And like, I had Frank this morning send me a text. He did some 35 cal repeats, and he did this a year ago, and he is almost a whole minute faster on the repeat efforts throughout the duration of all of them. And he was like, he's just sent me a picture of the side by side and like a little mind blown emoji. And it's just one of those things where like, yeah, it's like calculated to get you to be faster, and one of his things, if you guys have seen Frank, he's a big, strong guy. We primarily focus on like bodybuilding and strongman and powerlifting stuff. And like some people, you guys know who he is. You comment, you send me DMs when you see him do obscene stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest priorities for him is aerobic health for longevity. So he does a lot of conditioning. When I say a lot, 3 times a week conditioning. But when you're thinking about a strength athlete, normally that's not what you would do, or like a bodybuilding athlete for aesthetics. That's not the first place people go. But me as a coach, like what makes sense for his training, and the decision is like, well, you're going to do this for a long time. I've been coaching you for now 5 years, and we're going to make sure that you're healthy and you get all the other things you want, because he's not a competitive athlete. He's doing it for health, longevity. He wants to be strong. He wants to look good. And, those decisions are made by me, not by him, and what I think is good for him. And then the progression is built out so he can improve that aerobic capacity and that anaerobic power for those interval bike repeats, which ultimately, like I believe, based on the science and everything else, should raise his VO2 max, should help him with vasodilation, and just be better overall, and hopefully not, croak too soon like most people. Anybody got anything about an athlete and how you make decisions or training?
One of the first things that I wrote down, as far as like whenever you ask the question, like what's good programming, and I think we've touched on it quite a bit already, but it's intentional / specific. So like, you took Frank's what he wants to be good at, which is powerlifting and bodybuilding, and like that's his programming, and then conditioning is secondary. And it's not, golly, my mic's getting super loud. Sorry.
No, it's good. You sound great.
It was just getting loud in my ears. My bad. But you're not going to program. I mean, let's just make it really simple. You're not going to program CrossFit for him, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Like,
he's
you're
not
gonna
doing Fran, guys. He's not.
Yeah, he's not doing Fran. Like, he's doing aerobic conditioning, sustainable, 3 times a week to work on that longevity. He's not doing 21, 15, 9 thrusters and pull-ups
Right.
3 times a week. It's very intentional. It's very specific for the adaptations that he's wanting to get.
Yeah, and like for an example, I cycle through a lot of structures for him that are all the same. It's like aerobic machines, and we know what machines he has. And then I like to play with time domains with people who are more fitness, not calories or distance. I will do that and throw it in for variation. But he'll do rowing, and then he'll do sled pushes, and he'll do that for some rounds. And it will be the duration of how long I want the endurance to be for, depending on what we're doing, or whether it's like glycolytic or we're trying to do sprint stuff. Change it up. He'll do carries, front rack holds, farmers holds, a lot of stuff that I do give to athletes who are in the CrossFit space who need more endurance and mechanical tension endurance. But a lot of it's just like, what Marcus Filly has coined really well is like functional bodybuilding conditioning. And that stuff works really well. It's a system that he has, which is just based on, like Noah was saying, the principle of sustainability in a mixed modal setting. So yeah, it's good. Like being specific in your training. And I think whether you're one-on-one or you're in a group class, being more specific about what you want out of it is where you're going to get the best bang for your buck. So one-on-one coaching, obviously you have those conversations with your coach, like, Yeah, I want to improve my snatch, or I want to improve my aesthetics. Okay, specifically what about your aesthetics? Like, you want bigger biceps, you want bigger abs, like what's happening? And then, from CrossFit end, it's like, I want to be whatever, I want to be a 100th in the region. Okay, where are you now? Where are we going? And then you could get really nitty gritty into what they need to improve on. Let's take an example. What makes good training for somebody who is just like base, like someone lay out, somebody who wants to be competitive in CrossFit? Like, what should they be doing generally, and like the order of what they should be doing for on a daily training?
I mean, I think that all of it starts with like an assessment, right? Of like figuring out where they're at. Because I think if you don't know where you're starting, it's really hard to get where you want to go, even if you know where you want to go. So
Sure.
if they're a strength limited athlete, they're going to be doing their strength first and more. If they're an endurance limited athlete, then it'll obviously flip flop. But I think that knowing where you're starting is a good starting point, so that you
Let's
know
say
how to get where you're going.
Yeah, let's say we'll just lay it out. Let's say they're a fairly, balanced athlete, decently strong, decently aerobic, and they're getting ready for quarters. Like, what does a Monday look like? Like, just generally, you don't have to go into specifics, but like, what are they starting with on Monday?
I would say probably some Olympic lifting, because they're probably coming off of a full rest day, so they're snappier. And then even starting with like fresh Olympic lifting, and then going into maybe like fatigued Olympic lifting. So like, 20 cal bike into a 2-rep snatch or whatnot.
Yeah.
And then again, like CrossFit, and then after that, maybe some accessory work, I guess, depending on what they need. If they're deficient in, their triceps always blow up in pressing, maybe do some tricep work at the end of that session, something like that.
Yeah, that would pair well with the Olympic lifting, because assuming they're snatching or jerking, they're going overhead. Let's say so then evaluate like in your mind, a poor program that you would see for someone the same avatar, decently strong, and like no real glaring like strength or endurance imbalance. What would be something that'd be like, that's kind of a red flag when I see a programming like that? Anyone could answer. I feel like Harley's got a lot to say. I can see your face, Harley. I want to hear it.
I don't have much to say about what's like a red flag of a bad program, because I feel like at this point in the season, it's all about just doing CrossFit. And really, it would be like not being specific to the movement selection or loading that you might be seeing in quarterfinals. That would be the only red flag. If you're just doing like dumbbell man makers and, you know, anything you'd see in like a random HIIT class for the sake of just doing conditioning for a prolonged period of time to get tired, like that doesn't help you. It doesn't serve you for the time domains or loading, movement patterns, skill development, that you're going to see in quarterfinals for that well-rounded athlete. That said, general conditioning has its place in all programs to a degree. Depends on, I would argue more of like time of the year, but right now it's all about just playing the game, learning how to be sharp in playing the game. Whether it be the speed that you're going to be moving at, as well as the loads you're going to be moving at, your transition times, etc. Those are the details, the nuance of the execution of the program that's on the athlete side. But from like a red flag perspective, I feel like you can almost do anything right now that has the specific movements and loading that's relative to the next.
So if it didn't look like quarterfinals, you'd be like, all right, hey, what are we doing here? Like if we're doing, Devil's Press is fine, but we've never seen it. It's never been on .com. It's very fatiguing. But if you're doing Devil's Press, it'd be like, okay, that's a red flag because we haven't done that movement. And maybe someone's going to put their, chips on that bet. But really, it'd be better just to do single arm kettlebell snatch, because you've seen that in regionals for regional Nate. or just kettlebell swing because they did it at the CrossFit Games from the Masters. Similar movement patterns, similar in nature, but it'd be much better. Or doing dumbbell work where it's like dumbbell cleans and dumbbell front squats and dumbbell lunges rather than doing like devil's press or something of that nature. So like, yeah, you could find some red flags pretty easily if like they're a well-balanced athlete and you have them go run a mile and come inside and max clean and jerk, even though it's conditioning work. It's like, well, you're not going to run. Now, if it's a mile of shuttle runs, maybe, but you're not going to go out and run a mile for time and come in and clean and jerk unless that athlete knows that they're going to go to semifinals, then sure. But like that would be again another red flag of like, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Kind of thing. And so now Marissa has the question because like Harley's right. You could do anything that is sports specific, 2 quarters and a little bit of regional workouts if you know the history of those in semifinals. But almost all of it is increasing your intensities for right now during this time for a lot of people is just getting after it. Like I've sent a lot of text messages out. I don't know, and you guys can chime in, but I've sent a lot of messages to people like, look, it doesn't matter what the intention is or the purpose right now. You need to be pushing yourself as hard as possible to just gobble up fitness. And if you explode in a workout, you explode, unless it's an interval thing where it's like, there's a lot of rest. You don't really need to keep those rounds equal. You need to be chasing down intensity and only to the degree at which you're going to be safe. If like you're chasing down intensity at 80% snatches, probably walk it back a little bit. If you start to get wobbly and your shoulders are about to give out, like you don't want to get injured. Doing ring muscle ups and you start getting crazy and catching the dip low, like again, you don't want to get injured. Adding more volume to things because you feel like you need to do a ton of skill work. And then you're like doing rope climbs and ring dips and ring supports and all this other stuff because you're worried about those movements. You're at risk for injury. Don't be adding that kind of stuff. But adding in, more burpees, sure, totally safe. Adding in more rowing, sure, totally safe. If you have the energy for it after your session, great. But like right now, a good program is something that, like you guys are saying, keeping people sharp, doing a lot of CrossFit, high intensity, like Tyler had a great example, doing some bike sprints into some barbell work, which we actually did in our class yesterday.
Yeah.
So with that, then let's say someone gets done with quarterfinals and we've done all this good work. And again, it all depends because we're one-on-one coaches, but let's put our hats on for like GPP, not even GPP. People have made it to quarters. They're pretty good. They can do a lot of skills, but it is in a class setting. And potentially they want to either do like hybrid training or they want to do one-on-one. Where would you like go next with the training? And then we'll go over what Marissa's asking is like, what would you say are red flags for a majority of the year, AKA the off season? So let's just like, we've gotten past quarters and you have an athlete who wants to get better at quarters. They want to move up and you got to start making some decisions. And then what would be good training for them? And I know it depends, but let's just say you have a large group of athletes and you're going to write this 6-week pre-made cycle for a wide net. Where do you start? What does that look like?
Are we talking about red flags still, or are we talking about like what's
We'll
a good
get to the
program?
red flags. Good programming. Let's start with like decisions and good programming.
Okay.
Well, I think
Yeah,
about. Oh, go ahead.
Go, Harley.
Okay. I was thinking about always just sort of resetting coming off the competitive season. One, you want to make sure the body is able to recover, sort of heal itself, bring hormonal sort of balance back to the system. So really sort of resetting and pulling back intensity for at least a few weeks is a good place to start, just so you have a good healthy base to start from. Then from there, I'd be building aerobic base, generally speaking, probably lots of zone 3, zone 2 work that is prolonged so that you're ideally setting up a larger base of aerobic fitness that you can build intensity upon later on in the year. And then from there, you should be building structural stability, whether it be in gymnastics positional work or strength positional work. So ideally creating some balance around the joints would be, the ideal sake. Doing more isolated bodybuilding style work will probably serve you well. More for just longevity, health, and then again, falling in line with that reset going into the off season. From there, ideally, you'll have metrics upon sort of like what pools of people you'll need to go into, whether they're gymnastics limited, strength limited, or aerobic limited. And then you can either, if it's individualized, of course, you're going to have that data of that client and you can bucket them, choose a path, really narrow in on that. If it's generalized for a large group of people, you probably sort of know your biases already, and you can kind of take the data points from where they fell in the season and choose sort of a direction of like, well, a lot of our people fell short in hypothetically gymnastics, so we're going to throw our eggs in that basket.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into a little bit deeper. You started with aerobic base. Give me some, decisions that you would make for like movement selection, like exercise selection, loads, times, obviously, because if you could do aerobic mixed modal stuff, because you can in those zones 2, zone 3, where would you start? Give me just a little, like, I would start here, maybe progress this, or, 2 times a week we're doing this, or 3 times a week, just like off the top of your head for a large group. If you wanted to get a good bang for their buck for aerobic training, what are like 2 specific sessions? Let's go with that. I mean, I would almost argue you could do 3 a week for these people, but let's just do like 2 specific sessions off the top of your head. See what you got.
So I would go with purely erg based, low impact for one of the sessions, so that keeping joints happy, healthy, etc. And that'll be slightly dependent upon the facility's equipment base. So like
You got let's just imagine you got everything at your disposal. Give me a workout.
Okay, that's chill. The 30 to 45 minute EMOM, a minute AMRAP per machine rotating through. You could put everyone on different stations if it was a class setting and keep them flowing and moving for a prolonged period of time. Easy day. Yeah.
I think that's great. I think a lot of gyms don't do that. I think there are gyms that do that. We do that. It used to be like pulling teeth to get people to want to do it, but it's something huge that like I think a lot of people need to do more of. On top of building a base, like I said, with like Frank as an example, you're just building health as well. So it's really cool. And like, there's something to be said about giving coaches a break. Back in the day, like Fernando Ramirez used to talk to me about this a lot in like 2013, 2014, doing these like flow days to give, because coaches are on all week long. And like, I'm still on during those flow days, but it's easier to watch people's pacing and walk around and like, give them cues and corrections here and there versus like always having chaotic high intensity stuff or something. So it works really well for gyms, athletes, in a sense, assuming you have, like Harley's saying, all the aerobic machines. That was good. All right. What's day 2 of aerobic work for them then to complement that?
I would go depending on the time of the year, we're talking off season, depending on the environment. If they have, a snowy winter, you'd probably want to get them outside in some way, shape, or form. Going with some like running, odd objects, kettlebells, sleds, depending on equipment. That'd be a really fun way to, again, do something a little bit longer. You could even go like sustainable interval format. So maybe that looks like 8 minutes on, 4 minutes off for 3 rounds. Again, we're still up above like 30-ish minutes for a class, still fitting in the hour, but something that doesn't give them enough rest to bring a ton of intensity, and it's long enough that they know they're going to have to pace it a little bit slower. Just feel some external load, but again, probably not going to leave them beat up too much.
Yeah. Well, and I think also the key to that too is like choosing movements that don't bottleneck them moving too, right? I think sometimes like people like get caught up in like wanting to throw, pull-ups or whatever in there, and it's like not everybody can sustain that type of work. So I think like when you're doing movement selection, like you said, like doing carries, doing sandbag stuff, doing odd object and wall balls and whatever, so that things that they can continue to move, and there's not a lot of skill involved in that.
Yeah, that's good. Like that highlights a red flag. So if you're like evaluating program design, whether that's at your gym, because a lot of this, I want people to start evaluating programming. That's like my intention and my driver behind this. I want members to start evaluating programming. I want athletes to start evaluating programming, not in a negative way, just being like, hey, like, I don't know if this is good or not, and I don't know why. So maybe some tools. And like Heather's saying, and what Harley's alluding to is like, it needs to be continual work in aerobic. Like we know that. You just think about running or cycling or rowing or swimming. If you didn't have to, because of, energy substrate or fatigue, you could continue this work. And if you pace it right, you would continue running, you would continue rowing, you would continue swimming. So even if you're doing mixed modal work, like Heather's saying, you should be able to continue the work. If there's something that stops your movement pattern other than switching from like machine or movement, you have a problem in that aerobic work. That's not building your engine or your aerobic capacity base. And so if you have somebody like adding pull-ups into aerobic work, especially in the off season, and you're limited by the pull-ups and you can't do them, and they're telling you this is aerobic work, it's not aerobic work. Again, so that's a red flag, and you have to like call that out. Because this also helped too with coaches and learning and education of like, hey, like don't say that this is the stimulus if it's actually not, or you didn't write it the right way. It's okay to be like, hey, I messed that up. I didn't write this the right way. That wasn't intended like that. I need to like look at what I'm doing as a coach and go back and adjust that and evaluate it. Like that's also okay to do as well. So it's good. Two sessions there. He's got loaded carries and machines for longer duration, which I really like. I love the block training style. Like tempo is what they would call it in running. And then he's got the long aerobic EMOM. You could even like force people to do one machine the whole time, which they would hate. You'd probably quit your gym. So don't do that. And if you're a one-on-one coach, like, we have those conversations with athletes, like you just have to spend time on this thing. I know it sucks, and I know that it feels voluminous, but you got to do it. It builds out the base. Like Heather yesterday
It's
swapped
voluminous.
Is it what?
Voluminous. It's not voluminous. Voluminous.
Voluminous, really?
Correct. Yes.
Dang.
My mom corrected me, so
I don't
I'm
even
gonna
know.
correct you.
I'm gonna look it up. I don't believe her.
She owned a bookstore, man. It's kind
Just
of a
because
big
she had a
deal.
bookstore doesn't mean she knows words.
Oh, Tim doesn't even know.
he
Bit
does.
Harley
Todd.
laughed. That was
Yeah.
too much.
I'm just kidding. Who knows? I'll
Uh,
look it up. I have no idea. All right, voluminous. Cool.
Voluminous. Look it up.
I'm sure she's right. But yeah, Heather yesterday was like, I don't want to run. My calves hurt. I'm cramping.
Okay, in my defense, I was sprinting on Saturday. It was very uncomfortable. And then
Yep.
I did shuttle runs before that.
Wait, running at your mile pace is sprinting?
It felt like okay, well, when you were running, you were doing it with me, and you
was
said
killing
run
it.
at your mile pace.
Yeah.
And when we asked you where you were at, you said 5:30, and then you couldn't hold the full 2.5 minutes. And then you said, I made a
died.
poor choice, and you stopped at like 1:45.
Not
So
2
you-
minutes. I stopped at 2 minutes.
Okay.
Hold on.
Okay. Well, anyways, my point is that I was trying to be like you
Yeah,
and
it was
run a
good.
little beyond.
Is it better to stop, or would it be better just to pull back intensity and finish the interval?
It would have been better to pull back the intensity and finish the interval. I'm a little baby and I couldn't handle it.
No, you
It's okay.
said
I didn't hold my paces today on my run either, Todd.
That's all right. We
I
tried.
felt real sorry for myself, but that's okay.
Marissa believes Pam 100%.
it says
That says
1,000.
1,000.
1,000. See,
You
shoot.
also don't know numbers.
I don't. I'm stupid today. All right. So voluminous. We got it.
But what was the point that you were making about the bike thing? Were you making a point about that?
No,
Oh.
it wasn't. Just
Well, I think you were saying that even if I wasn't able to do the running, I'm
Oh,
still
yeah, yeah,
trying
sorry,
to get
sorry.
aerobic. in,
yeah, so
right?
she
It's just-
swapped in the bike, which is totally fine. But yeah, my point to that is like it's not her off season. She's getting ready to do quarters. Heather and I have talked. I'm gonna put you on blast on live. Heather's gonna try to go to the CrossFit Games, so we're gonna train real fucking hard this next year and get her to the CrossFit Games. So with that, like one of her biggest issues is running and aerobic work, and so I've been just having her run a lot, whether it's on the air runner or on the road. And like right now, because we're getting ready for quarters, she only runs a little bit, and it's just like micro doses because I want to keep that volume up for her. Because when she comes out of quarters this year, because we know that she's going to try and get as deep as she can, but you're not going to make. I mean, if all the workouts line up for you, you might make the games, but
Yeah.
the data shows like
Yeah.
you're probably not making it.
Yeah.
If there's like high volume ring muscle ups and gymnastics and legless rope climbs and stuff like that, it's just going to be really tough on you. And we're going to give the best showing we can.
Yeah.
But we already know from your heart rate data, other workouts, that building a base and using running for you specifically is going to be a good tool to build out her progression in the off season. So,
Well, and I think it's like even identifying that too, because I think that sometimes coaches will program aerobic work and they're like, oh, okay, just ride the bike erg and it's fine. Right. And it's like, for me, like riding the bike erg at the same intensity is way different than me, like just running, like almost like walking when I'm running. And my heart rate's like way exploded. So it's like even identifying that through athletes that like different modalities is going to change their output, even if it doesn't seem like it would. Like they're, yeah, like just being able to understand that and not. So for me, changing it to the bike, the real reason why I was asking you was because I knew the bike was going to elicit a different response. Or sorry, the running was going to elicit a different response than the biking. But I also knew that I'm like, oh, okay, I don't really want to like,
Get
break
hurt
my
before,
calves
yeah.
or whatever, right? So that was really why I was asking, not because I was trying to.
No,
be a
yeah,
baby
and
about
that's,
it.
I mean, so this is a good example. I mean, one-on-one coaching, and I coach Heather, so it makes sense. But like, yeah, I'd rather her switch it up and not get injured going into quarters, so she can feel her best 4 quarters, but still keep in mind some of the priorities that we're working on to build her program design. And that's like another thing to look at. And this decisions we're making as coaches, like, and what you guys are alluding to is like, yeah, it depends on the individual person and what we're trying to work on. But really, it's like that's the biggest red flag is like movement selections being chosen. Whether you use, like, for example, let's say you're doing a template or you're doing mayhem or something, or you're going into class, the movements you're choosing have a great impact on your output of fitness and down the road and how you become an athlete and what you evolve into. Like Heather's saying is like, if she continues to bike all the time and I don't force her to run, the chances of her building a more robust aerobic sustainable system throughout systemically, she works on the footfalls, the ballistic and plyometrics of running, her calves strengthen up, her feet get stronger. It's so demanding on her versus skier, rowing, or biking that it's going to have a higher yield of physical adaptation than those other 3 machines, which typically people defer to often. It's like I make the joke all the time in class. I'm like, oh, you don't want to use the Echo bike? Why not? Because we're limited in space and machines now. And I go, oh, I just say machine. Again, everybody chooses. And like the last choice is either ski erg or Echo bike. And the ski erg is more because like I know it's upper body dominant. People don't want to do it. But people will choose the ski erg before they choose the Echo bike. But the Echo bike generally is going to give you a greater yield in total fitness. You can't run. And I always make the joke. But again, it's like making those choices, whether you're an athlete in class or you're following a blog, but for one-on-one, we make those choices for you in your program design. And those choices need to be correct. So like if you're with a one-on-one coach who's not, you're just like always like, you gotta get better at snatching, they're not having you snatch. Well, there's a problem in your program. If they want you to get more aerobic and you've identified like running is just terrible for me and there's not enough running and frequency of running, you're not going to get better at running. The hard thing is like things like that, typically that you're bad at, running or snatching, puts a heavy load on the shoulders. So you're like, oh, my shoulders always hurt. It's like, well, yeah, because we're snatching a lot. Like it's part of the process. Same thing with running. I like Matt Chia, his calves blow up. We're trying to integrate the running. I got to pull back on the running. I got to add more running. I pull back and change. And it's okay. Like sometimes it hurts him for double unders. Sometimes it hurts him for box jump overs. And I'm always playing that balance, but he needs that constant exposure of stress, recovery of the same thing, double unders, jumping, running. It's all the same to a degree because you can't just do a bunch of box jumps and think you're going to get better and run like a half marathon. It doesn't work like that.
Well, and I think what's good about that too is that you're not eliminating it either, right? I think sometimes a lot of coaches, people are like, I can't burpee because it hurts the balls of my feet, or I can't do this because historically this has bothered me or whatever. And so it's like, I think still like not choosing to eliminate it, but like giving him that gradual exposure, because usually the thing that hurts them is the thing that they probably need the most. When they're having like pain and stuff like that. Right. So they like have weakness in those positions and they need to like build exposure to those movements, right? Along with like accessory work that's going to give them, that's going to help build their joint stability and things like that, or whatever their like pain or issue that they're
he
having.
does a ton of calf raises. So there's that.
Right. Which is good. But like you could like, I mean, obviously Matt Chia is a really high level athlete and he wants to go to the games and all those things. So you're not just going to eliminate that. But I'm looking at like, even just like one-on-one programming, people coming in, and even like those athletes, like being open to those conversations. Cause I think sometimes I've worked with people that are like, I can't do that thing. And they just like are so close-minded in like not being able to do that. And I mean, there's still like some give or take, like you're not going to make them do something they're uncomfortable with, but getting them to understand that like, that's usually the thing that they still need exposure to, and not
Yeah, it's really crazy how many PTs. I'm sure Harley, you guys have a ton of physical therapists inside of like as members inside of DTC, because even this morning we got a couple in there in one class, and Kairos too. And like Liz was talking about her sciatica, and the PT's talking to her, and she's like, "Well, you got to strengthen it. You got to do." You got to do lunge. And I'm over there laughing because I've told Liz, you got to lunge, you got to do this. Like, you got to, obviously you got to be aware of it, but like you need to strengthen. And the PT's telling her like, yeah, you got to really strengthen these areas, like do this and that. And like, it's cool to see that Cairo and PT, I think, has moved into more of a vein of what we've been doing for a really long time as strength coaches and CrossFit coaches of like, yeah, strength is the way, and it's not the cure for everything, but there's a lot of people who complain about, sore muscles and tissues, and they go get massage or they go get Cairo, and that stuff's good for recovery. But you need to, again, like I said, the stress to recovery, you have to stress it and then recover it and then stress it again and recover it. And over time it gets better. And that's true for, all program design, as far as like making decisions on if you got a gymnastics limited athlete or again, a strength limited athlete or endurance limited athlete. The exposure of what you need to get good at needs to be pretty consistent. Yeah. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
and like
frequency is everything for sure.
Yeah.
But I think like even the conversation you were having with John last week about his handstand walking, right? And he was having this conversation because he wrote in his program, okay, you're going to do, I don't know, whatever it was, 10 or 15 attempts of 10-foot walks or whatever it was. And John was over there like, Todd walked away, he'd come back, and he's doing like more and more and more because he's getting so frustrated. But now his body's like getting overly fatigued. And Todd was having this conversation with him about, I need you to just do the reps that I'm telling you and no more, no less, because like it's so highly neurological for him that like his body can't handle just like doing an hour of like handstand walking work. Right. But it's like, but being able to do that a couple times in the week is important because he needs the exposure, like Todd's saying. But like, I think sometimes athletes are just like when they're working on a skill like that or muscle ups, it's like they want to do it for like an hour and it's like their body can't like handle that, because it is highly neurological.
I was gonna wait for someone to say something, but
well, no, man,
yeah.
I think that's a great touch. Like, I think on Harley said, like frequency is everything, but then someone can see that as like, okay, I'm going to just hammer this skill, destroy myself. And then tomorrow, and then not be able to do it for like a week or 2 weeks, depending on whether it was overstressed, you got injured, whatever. Or you can, as a coach or as an athlete, see how much volume you need to accumulate throughout the week. And then you break it up into smaller parts to where you're able to recover from that one session, rest one day, and then go back to it and do it again at the same effort or an even better effort because you recovered and you adapted to it, and do the same thing and progress over time with more volume, but you're still staying in your lane and you're able to recover from that work.
And keeping quality high. I think
Yes.
when you're doing an hour, like the quality of work does not stay at the same.
So there's this classic line, Bill Grundler, I think, was doing commentary at Dubai. And Laura Horvath was like failing her handstand push-ups. And he's like, well, she's going to go practice those handstand push-ups every day now. And it's like, nope, she probably
No,
won't.
not every day.
Nope.
Yeah.
That's not how it works, man.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot, but
not to
every
call
day.
out Bill, but that's just like the old school sort of like CrossFit, like you have a weakness, you just got to hammer it every day. And it's like, not quite, but frequency of, 3 days a week, that's reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the other thing that is a big conversation point that I have with athletes is that it's not like playing the piano or shooting free throws. Like you can shoot free throws in the driveway for hours and not fatigue to the degree where you can't still shoot the free throw or take a break and come back and shoot 100 more free throws. Like, yeah, you'll get some fatigue, but like if you're working on ring muscle ups, you can't, like you have a volume tolerance. Like we did a Senate Saturday that was an old qualifier workout. And, if you finish the workout, you're doing 40 ring muscle ups. And some of us didn't finish the workout because of a limitation in volume or the loading parameters. But like that 40 ring muscle ups is a lot. That's a lot of stimulus. And if you're over there in the corner and you're getting frustrated and you're either like trying to walk 10 feet and you do that 1,000 times, you've now just walked 10,000 feet. Like you're not going to try 1,000 times, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's just so much volume that you're adding that you're not accounting for because you're not following the program, or you're following a program. We look at Move Fast, Live Heavy. And I don't want to like call them out because I think a lot of their training is really cool and there's a lot of good stimulus. And I think they do hit a volume threshold that is comparable to people who are going to compete at semifinals. And or you look at Mayhem, same idea. The volume is so much that I was like, I just don't know how anyone would do it. You just get broken with that. So that's another red flag too, is like looking at the volume and then evaluating yourself or having your coach evaluate you of like, yeah, Todd can only do, this is a true statement, about 200 feet of handstand walks in a session. Beyond 200 feet, I fall apart. I can do more. And when I'm trying to overreach, I should do more. But 200 feet, however that's broken up, whether that's, you know, whatever, 8 rounds of 25, or it's 100 and 100 or whatever, 50 times 4, at 200, I just fall apart. And that's my threshold of volume. And so what I have to do is I would have to do the 200, rest a little bit, and maybe go 25 feet and then do that a couple times a week to build that up. But with enough, like Noah's saying, with enough rest in between. So maybe every 4th day, and like eliminate the week thought process too. That's the other thing. Like time is on a continuum. It's not in the 7-day week that we all think it is. It just helps us have our life be nice. But realistically, like, every 4 days, if I really wanted to improve my handstand walking, every 3 to 4 days, I should be doing handstand walking and increasing that volume incrementally. And then sometimes not even increasing it, just hitting the 200 at a good effort, and maybe even trying to go 200 for time sometimes, breaking it up in intervals and working on speed. Some days working on like handstand hold into a 25-foot handstand walk, because that's going to build my inverted endurance. And like you could break that down, right? So like when we're looking at good program design, if you're following a program and you have a deficiency in the handstand walk and you don't see those types of quote unquote progressions or breakdowns of training, you have a bad program or you have a bad coach. Like, and that needs to be taken care of. You either need to switch programs or you talk to your coach. And if they can't make a change, find a new coach, right? And just using myself as an example, that's an easy thing to do.
I think
So.
Go
ahead, Harley.
Would you, with those handstand type of progression sort of example, right? Would you say that that is a staple right now going into quarterfinals?
For me, yeah, because quarters is going to ask that. And like Heather knows, I've been training a lot because I want to do well in quarters. And I want to see if I can just cram a bunch of fitness down my throat. She's laughing because I've been trying to go hard and just killing myself. And yeah, I would do that, a lot of it. And then I'd like add in an echo bike and then handstand walk, you know, something that, or running and handstand walk, something that's super global and fatiguing. And then just pray that I can, you know, make something happen.
Right. I guess my question is, how much of training is limiter training at this point, whenever we're going into this season and we're truly only like 3 weeks away?
I would say 10%. That's my
it's so little, right? That's sort of what I'm getting at, is more of like how much of that is actually.
Let's hear everybody else's number real quick. What do you think, Heather? Everyone go around the horn. Heather first.
I don't know.
How much percent?
Not very much. I don't know.
Give it a number.
5%.
Okay. All right. Tyler?
7.5.
Jeez, it's like Price is Right.
I was going to say 8%, but now it's too close to his. I'm going to go 9%.
You can't go over though. You can't go over.
Yeah, I can't go over the 10%.
No, but you gotta be closest. But yeah, you can't.
Like you still have to work on that limiter, but like there's so much like sport specificity that you have to focus on during those.
Like what's going to reward someone more, right? Like
right.
At this point is what my context is. My point is what's going to reward someone more: getting sharper and learning how to transition, pushing higher intensity, you know, dialing in some weightlifting and barbell repeatability, and or, you know, gaining confidence. Really, it's more about confidence up here rather than, you know, spending 30% of their limited amount of time to train, because we're all just hobbyists in the grand scheme of things. We all have real jobs.
Speak for yourself. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
And so like, if you have a limited amount of time and you're spending 30% of it just learning one skill, you're leaving a lot on the table, I would say, from a fitness perspective at this moment, just because of how close we are in proximity. That said, yes, you should definitely be touching on skills. You should be practicing some things in ideally a format with rest, or in, you know, with less compounding fatigue, or enough compounding fatigue that makes it challenging, but you're able to still be successful in the movement, right? I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And I would say that those long term and the limiter sort of bridge model is more of an off season approach, right? Like that's when it should be taking up like 60% of your time.
Yeah. I mean, there's also a huge value, and I don't think people should do this all year, but I think right now, and anytime you're prepping for any type of competition or online qualifier, is learning how to deal with it when shit hits the fan too. Like that's the value you get. Like when you, okay, you know, I hate this saying because everyone says it during the open. It's like Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Like the number of times I've heard that in the gym over the last month, just stop saying that. Just leave me alone. But it is true. Like you do have to be able to, you know, you got your plan, you're going in, and then you start getting messed up because CrossFit is the sport of messing you up and making sure that you are dealing with a lot of metabolic demand, a lot of breathing, a lot of muscle fatigue. And how are you going to get through that? And the fittest, you know, they don't necessarily have that problem like the rest of us, but it's like, okay, you get stopped for a second. It's like, well, look at the clock. All right, I got to get a round done, like 24.3, or the Senate Saturday we did, which was very similar, 5 rounds, ring muscle ups and shoulder overhead. And then 5 rounds of a heavier load and still ring muscle ups. Same thing. It's like when things start to go bad, like what are you going to do? And I told Heather going into that workout, I was like, try to do a round every 90 seconds. Like just start with that and see how it goes. And if you feel good, I don't care how you do the work. Maybe try to do a minute 20 and speed it up and just hold that rate of travel. And how you decode, you know, whether that's I'm going to do the ring muscle ups in 2 and 2, and then I'm going to do the shoulder overhead in 4 and 3, or what, like whatever that game plan is, just do it in the 90 seconds and figure that out. She could do singles. I don't really care. Is it done in 90 seconds? Great. Move on to the next round and then get that one done in the 90 seconds. And there's a lot of value in that, like Harley's saying, of doing high intensity CrossFit style training and qualifier style training so that when you actually get tested, you are ready, because you're like, when things go bad, I know what I'm going to do. And there's a lot of value there. And you can't do that all year because like you have to bring yourself to that brink to do it. And I would say like that's a red flag for year-long programming, like Marissa's saying, is like if you're doing that all year long, trying to like just beat yourself up and figure it out, you're probably on the wrong training program. It's not a good system. Get off of it. Because, you know, I was talking to Sophie yesterday, and she didn't want to say anything bad because she really enjoyed doing Mayhem, but she fractured her vertebrae doing Mayhem. Like I was talking to Cody, and like, I was like, what would happen, Cody? Because Sophia had a huge issue of ring muscle ups, and Marissa's fixed that problem for her. But I was like, when we do that workout, what would she have done in Mayhem when there's like 40 ring muscle ups? He's like, oh, she'd like scale it, you know, change it up. And it's like, okay, so you're not getting any better because you have to scale all this stuff. And then there's no progression after that workout. Like, that's the other thing about one-on-one coaching, or even in an affiliate. Like if you have a problem in a workout that's that big, like for someone like Sophia who wants to be competitive and she has a problem with ring muscle ups that she had to scale this program design, tell your coach. Like we're going to see it in Coach RX. We're going to go, oh man, that was a huge problem. We're going to work on that through the off season. We're going to write that down. But like if you're on a blog or something, or you're in a CrossFit class and you go, hey coach, I just got wrecked and stopped. Like, how do I fix that? And they don't have a solution. Yeah, that's also like a red flag. And it just goes back to like having a plan of program design, having an evaluation system, like you guys are all saying, and like testing, like Tyler's saying, and looking at it and being like, all right, like this is what we got to work on and figure out how to work on it, you know, and then pick the appropriate movement selections from that.
Yeah. And here's just a reminder, like just as, you know, I see feedback or I miss feedback sometimes, right? Like we're scanning through a ton of information, right? Like stuff just slips through the cracks. We're all human. If you add a comment at the bottom of Coach RX, it'll send an email if the coach has it set up for notification. So it's easier to be like, hey, here's a red flag. Like I need you to look at this, or send a text. Like that's all great.
Text message me. If you want to text message me,
Yeah, text us. Like it's totally fine.
I'm not getting to it.
Text us. Like it's way easier to not lose stuff if you just send a message, right? Text, message, comment, make it very, very clear. If there's like a problem in your program and your feedback in your experience and you have a true concern, you may have to make it very, very clear.
Yeah.
And then whenever we come back and we're like, hey, do you have a video of that? You're like, no, I don't. It's like, well, shit. Like,
Right.
like try to be on top of like having a resource to where we can review what's going on, anecdotes and stories, and having conversation. There is value in that, and we can try to decipher, but really it's just educated guesses at best. And so
Mhm.
like until we have like a clip and we're like, oh, we can see this is what we can, build upon, that can actually guide the progression as well of like, if we realize your deficiency in ring muscle ups or whatever it is very specific to a certain part of the movement, then we can, narrow in on that area of that. Or we realize that with compounding pressing fatigue, with that shoulder to overhead and ring muscle up combination in this week's send it, we're like, oh man, your dips blew up and you couldn't lock out your dip. All right, sweet. Well, now we know. Like, then we need to narrow in on maybe the support position a little bit more. Yeah, it's just we can, as a coach, I guess my gut reaction is we can only do as much as we know, and we are far from psychic. So be as transparent as
You're
possible.
not? You can't figure it out? Jeez Louise. Come on.
Dude, I
Harvey.
know my
You didn't
value
take
is
that
shit. I
certification?
can't read your mind.
Yeah, you didn't take that psychic certification. Jeez. Yeah, I think they have it on westside.com. I think you can figure that out.
Dude,
Westside.
Westside Barbell has psychics.
Yeah, definitely.
Dude, is that why
Yeah.
Louis was so good?
He might have been. No, because he trained everyone in person. He didn't do any remote stuff.
Mhm.
Dude,
Yeah.
steroids are also really, really cool.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really valid point. And that goes back to like learning about yourself as an athlete too. Like you have to communicate areas of issues, whether you know like exactly what that is or isn't. It's got to get built back into the program, especially in the off season. And like we're coming up, like the season's here. We have people who are going to get to semifinals as masters in age groups, and then we're going to have people get to the games, and their season's going to get elongated. But for a lot of people, the quarters is going to be the end of the season, and like with the 25%. It does, and if they continue to do that, it poses a really cool opportunity of like training structure, which we've already seen of like everybody can play high aerobic stuff, which is like the base of the pyramid above nutrition, metabolic conditioning. And it's going to be cool to see how that progresses over the years, because that does, build the sport in a certain way that lends to a certain adaptation of fitness and what they're asking for. And then when you get into quarters, we'll see what it looks like this year. I'm assuming it's going to be a lot like last year. And if they keep this like idea of like bottlenecks where, either the volume is really high and like high level athletes are going to push through, like I said, like the 80 burpee with the 4K row workout, like from a few years back, if they do something like that, yes, the fittest are going to stomp on everybody. But that allows an opportunity to be like, hey, look, this is an aerobic workout. I need to work on my aerobic capabilities and build from there. And then if there's weightlifting things in there that just build where it's like it starts at 95 and it goes up to like for men and starts and goes up to 315 on a clean, like that's going to create the bottlenecks. You're going to see the strength deficiencies, and it's going to allow you an opportunity to evaluate your training, talk to your coach, talk to your gym owner, your coach that coaches your classes, and build these things and like build your fitness. Cause that's really what we're here to do. And I think too much CrossFit training isn't linear enough, because now that we're trying to get more people to do CrossFit, which I think is great, that as far as like CrossFit's mission and the affiliates mission, we need to have these stepping stones. We need to teach people. And I think that's the problem with fitness as a whole, and why one-on-one coaching is so valuable and why we've seen it be so valuable is because you take someone from A to B. It's the personal training model, but you also have these steps along the way and the goal in mind that really works in that training progression. Whereas like CrossFit originally was like, well, we're going to do all these things and they're translatory and they build on each other and they're functional movements and they all play together and you're going to hit all these different energy systems. And over time, you're going to get better. But now that we're seeing like, and that was good when it was like first responders, D1 athletes, D2 athletes, coming out of college, people were getting good at this stuff because they had a base, an athlete history. But now that you're getting people, non-athletes, people want to lose weight, people who understand the value of everything that we're doing, we need as coaches and affiliate owners to start being better. And the same thing is true with elite athletes. If you have elite athletes that want to compete, if coaches get better, well, the competition is going to get even better. And so your training program needs to be even more precise. And that comes from, like Harley's saying, conversation between the coach and the athlete, understanding off seasons, understanding in seasons, understanding when there's time for intensity, when there's time for, building skills. And like Noah's saying, recovery and balancing the work to recovery and the frequency of training and all of these things that are so important that I think are getting overlooked by a lot of coaches. And we need to that's why we're just doing this talk, really, is just to get people to open up their minds to it. So then we can move forward in education, continue pushing what we're pushing and having these types of conversations. It's good stuff. You guys added a lot of value today. Hopefully we got 6 people watching. So there it is.
Sweet.
Nice.
We do have a good question from Ethan. As an athlete with an aerobic limitation, how long do you wait after season and to jump into heavier aerobic activity? Do you do positional training before at the same time or mix it in? Harley, that's your athlete, so you could go ahead.
Okay.
I
would argue Ethan doesn't really have an aerobic limitation from the paces he's able to hold relative to the rest of his fitness.
True.
That's my gut reaction there, because he can actually like rip on an erg pretty dang powerfully for a while. I think his limitation is a little bit elsewhere. But that said, regardless, I think you can dive back into that zone 2 type of training 3-4 days a week if you're truly aerobically limited. And you can do that right away as long as you're truly in those aerobic zones, because a true zone 2 effort is easy. Like, it should be nearly conversational pace. It should be, take almost little to no mental energy. And if you do it in the good combination or a low impact way, it's not going to beat you up. So you could dive right back into that right away. And then with the positional work, if you're talking about gymnastics positions and it's just isometrics in nature, then yeah, you can layer that into the aerobic work, arguably, doing a little bit of aerobic, a little bit of hold, etc., a little bit of aerobic, a little bit of carries, those types of things all sort of blend together really well. If you want to go deep down the rabbit hole of like aerobic development and building out endurance, you could go almost a hybrid athlete model and like a polarized training model. So protect your strength, doing a ton of absolute strength work with bodybuilding, heavy lifts, and then really dive in the pursuit of, running long distance. And that's kind of what I did in my off season. And both became pretty resilient. So like I didn't get weaker as I ran more, and I didn't get slower or less enduring as I lifted more, but I just sort of spaced them out appropriately to where I had enough recovery from both.
That's a huge thing. A lot of people don't do that. Like, they try to do what you're doing, but they don't realize how much, like, it's almost to a degree where you want to do one in the morning and one in the evening or the afternoon. Some people don't have time for that, but like
you just separate the stimulus, if you want to call it the stimulus, right? Like if you think about if this session is supposed to be heavy, you make that session heavy. If it's supposed to be aerobic, then you make that session aerobic. And it has to be true to what the characteristic you're trying to develop is.
Yeah. I mean, the science tells you minimum of 4 hours in polarized training of separation, minimum. So athletes who are like, I'm going to do my strength work and my endurance work because I don't have time, or they just don't set up their day to be that way. Well, you're blunting those adaptations to a degree. So you're not going to get the results that Harley got because you're not protecting those things. So keep that in mind. Like, that's a huge thing I fight with athletes all the time. And they'll be like, oh, I can't. And it's like, well, then we're not going to do that. Well, I want to get better. Well, you're not creating the time to do it to get better.
It's a time management issue at that point.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, I would say with Ethan, most athletes, I would say in the off season, like you could again, like Harley's saying, you could layer on a lot of zone 2 work as long as your body recovers, as long as you feel good and it's not dampening all your other stuff. The thing I was going to say, you guys did cover a lot about like joint quality and tissue work, and like what Harley and Heather are saying about that stuff is like what Harley alluded to is like, ring supports, on the top of the dip position. Like that could be joint tissue quality work, overhead holds, overhead carries, stuff like that. I would also go as far, if you want to do like the transitional pieces and dynamic contractions, especially in gymnastics, is improving your weighted pull up in a hollow body position, improving like your L hang from a bar, from a rope, improving L sit holds because the shoulder's in a different position, improving your freestanding handstand hold. All of that stuff is going to improve your joint quality, and it's low intensity to a degree, but you're also building a lot of strength. And I think a lot of people don't look at strength in that way. Like even doing planks with a vest on, or planks putting on, old school style, putting a plate on your back, and loading those things, doing isometric holds with load, or even band tension. This one's like, people don't do these or they think they're stupid, but doing hip ups, side plank hip ups with a band resistance around your hip, and then holding through that resistance and then controlling down slow. A lot of tempo work, but trying to overall build your strict strength is huge. And whatever that means to you, you got to try and make that work for you. And same thing with bodybuilding. You should always be using as heavy a weights as possible when you are bodybuilding. Bicep curls, tricep extensions, all that stuff, flies, as heavy as you can while maintaining the position and technique and the repetitions that are prescribed. So when it doesn't have a load, it just means like go effing heavy. All right. Cause you need it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be out here with 5 pound weights being like, I'm doing this. I'm back in the 80s. I got my spandex on, ready to roll. Doesn't work. I mean, it might work if that's where you're at. If you're at 5 pound weights.
Spandex works. 5
That's
pound
true.
weights, not so much.
That's true. Compression does work, actually. You're right. You got me there. Cool. Does anybody have anything else to add? I think we cover a lot of really good stuff. People want to spend their time listening to this. All right. And if you don't have a good program or good coach, quarter's almost over. We're here. We can take athletes. We're ready to rumble. We're ready to get you to your fitness goals, live a healthy lifestyle, achieve great things. I was saying this, I'll end it on this, and then you guys could say anything if you got it. But I was telling somebody the other day, we were talking about the open, like why should she do the open? And just a member of the gym. I go, name something as an adult that is athletic, that everyone can do, and they can be very competitive at it. Because you can't just sign up and be in the NFL. It doesn't work like that. You can't be like, I'm going to be in the NBA tomorrow, but you could train really effing hard and go to the CrossFit Games. You really could. I mean, but you can't, you're not at 40 years old quitting your job and joining the NFL. It doesn't work like that. But because of masters divisions and other things, I know there's other sports. But the point of it is like it is one of the singular things that you could really, as a master's, train for, as even as a college athlete, you could train for and really go all in and try to get into something highly competitive that impacts your fitness and your health in a positive way to a degree. At some point you got to tip it over and it becomes really unhealthy, but there's nothing else that is out there. Like you go play volleyball. I make the joke of like, because there's volleyball like near the Beachcomber out here, or kickball. People do that out here too. And like, you're just coming out with your friends and you're being athletic, but you're drinking beers and like hanging out, and we got some people play paddle ball pretty competitively, but it's just not the same thing. You can't get into the arena the way you can with CrossFit, local CrossFit competitions, bigger competitions. And it's really unique in that nature. So you should take advantage of it, because it is, like Harley was saying, it's a really cool hobby that has so many other impacts in your life and your health and your mindset that you can't get from, playing rec league, bowling. It just doesn't work like that.
I mean, something that's really cool, and I see this, with new members rolling the door, and I'm sure other people can attest similar stories, but there's very few things that you can move across the country, walk into a new business and be like, hey, I've been doing this for a little while. Can I try it out? Can I hang out with you? And then you make a whole new batch of friends, like really easily. Most gyms, like, don't get me wrong, you hear the horror stories of people in gyms not being very inclusive or kind of being cliquey, but like for the most part, like if you're just an open-minded person rolling into a new business and you do CrossFit, like a new affiliate, like, and you're down to earth and you're not a dick, like they're not going to be a dick. Like they're going to be cool too. So
You can still be a dick.
it's
Yeah,
pretty, yeah.
you
It's
come to my
that's
gym
good.
and be a dick. I'm gonna razz you the whole time.
Yeah, but I mean, there's very few things that can be that inclusive as well. Like, and then that CrossFit didn't really have a good rap, a few years ago about inclusivity, and that was more socioeconomic. But in the grand scheme of things, you roll into any gym and you join and you want to be there, like they're gonna help you out and make you a part of their community. So it's pretty dang cool.
Yeah.
Would it be beneficial to go around and say who has availability from a client coaching perspective? If anyone's made it this far who's not already a client?
Yeah, and people who watch us later on. I mean, we're accepting people all the time. I know Heather has availability. Noah, Tyler, Harley. Do you have any availability? I haven't talked to you in a while about it.
We can figure it out.
That's a maybe. People, I got nobody. I ain't taking nobody on. Okay.
Give me a few weeks and it'll be easier to say yes. Basically, yeah.
I'll take
Very
all the people.
All right. That's good.
Tyler will take all the people.
Tyler's good. Hey, I've been looking at his athletes and his programming. I mean, geez, you're getting lucky if you get signed up with Tyler.
Nice.
I'm serious. Yeah, we do. We're always accepting people. We're excited to do it. Trying to figure out how we can help you after quarters and what that's going to look like. So if you guys are looking for a coach, reach out, info@thepack.fit or Instagram one of us, and we will get rolling with you. If you guys have anybody who is looking for a coach, if you think we're great, recommend us, like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll keep doing this because it's fun. We like it. And we'll see you guys later.